Here we have a 2009 BMW 1 Series. It's the 2 litre diesel and it's got roughly 68,000 miles on the clock. So customers complained that when she gets out of the car after a journey of some distance, there's quite a smell of, it smells hot and burnt, and there's a bit of noise from the brakes, possibly the back end. So I'm going to start by making sure the handbrake is released and just seeing if I can turn all the wheels freely. Right, so I'm just going to have a quick visual inspection of the brakes. I mean, that clearly spins freely, so that's not sticking. I've already done the driver's side and that feels the same, that's free. Couldn't see any faults with that. The brake pad I can just about see down there, it's a little bit tricky, but that looks like it's got plenty left on it. Discs are quite worn actually, there's quite a big lip on those. So I will let them know that. I don't think that's the cause of their problem. No. Wheel bearing feels good and the steering feels tight. No free play there I can feel. So that's both front wheels are okay. They did say they thought it was from the back end, so hopefully we'll find something. They look okay. Again, a bit of a lip on the discs. Not as bad as the front. Certainly got some wear in them. Ooh, bit of play there. It's not sticking. I think that's going to be a wheel bearing on its way out, possibly. Oh no, it's actually an upper suspension control arm. I'll try and show you that in a little while, but continue the inspection of the brakes. Now this one, yeah, you can only just turn it. And sometimes you can tell by the colour of the corrosion on the disc that looks a little bit more orangey reddy than the other side, so you know that's probably been getting a bit hot. Pad looks okay, what I can see. Again, a bit of a lip on the disc. And that one's got a bit of free play as well. I think it's the top arm, yeah, bit of play in the bushes. Okay, so I did ask the customer when they dropped the car off, it's quite a good tip, have you got a locking wheel nut key? So yes, they went straight to it, but it was hidden in a certain place. They do get tucked away, different areas, so that saved a bit of time. We got this ready. So next we'll get the wheel off and see if we can strip that brake down. Right, so this is the passenger's rear, the near side rear, where I felt a bit of play, top and bottom, and the back wheel, and it's actually the same on both back wheels. But if you look at that upper suspension link arm there, you can probably see the inner mount there, the bush. I think that's a bit past its best. Got a bit of free play in that. So I will recommend a couple of those arms, one each side. So this is a different angle, just looking at it. I don't know whether you can see a bit more from down there. It's this arm here that we're looking at. It's got a mount on the outside here, behind the wheel, and the inner one, that's the one that's causing the free play. Right, so let's get the wheel off. If you're using a gun, it's a good idea to crack this loose on the floor by hand. You don't want to risk stripping the locking wheel nut key. A little bit seized. You do find that they corrode up a little bit on the hub there. You can see the corrosion. It's worth just getting a wire brush, giving that a dust off, and inside the wheel, and a little bit of grease before we put it back on. The last thing you want is to be stuck somewhere with a puncture and unable to get the wheel off. Right, now at this stage I'm not sure whether it's the brake caliper, which is operated with a foot brake obviously, whether it's that seizing, or inside here is the handbrake shoes and mechanism. So it could be the handbrake which is sticking. But we'll have a go at this caliper next, see if I can move that freely. So with the wheel off on this side, you can get a better view of this suspension arm, which has got a little bit of free play on the inner bush here. The one that we looked at on the other side. This one has also got a small amount of play, but I can't really demonstrate it with the wheel off. It's just got a bolt fix in here and another one up there, so looks like a relatively straightforward job to replace. So this brake caliper, it could be this that's seized the piston inside the caliper. Needs to be a bit mindful of this. This is the wear indicator sensor, and you can break those quite easily, so don't go levering around in there really. I'm just going to get a screwdriver in behind this pad against the brake disc and see if I can lever the caliper over. It should move, but it doesn't feel like it wants to. I'll try at the bottom as well. That has gone a bit and it's freed off. So that's a pretty good indication we're looking at a brake caliper fault rather than the handbrake. I will operate the handbrake on and off a few times and hopefully that'll stay free. And if it does, then yeah, definitely the foot brake, the brake caliper. Okay, so handbrake is off. Handbrake on. You always get a little bit of movement there, but that's it. Handbrake off. So I'm fairly confident the handbrake is releasing properly. I'll just try putting my foot on the brake. Right, I've pumped the pedal a couple of times and it's stuck again. So I think we've got a brake caliper issue there, yeah, definitely. Yeah. So next step, I think we'll take this caliper off and see if we can find out what's going on. Right, to remove this caliper, we're going to need to undo two bolts at the back. There's one in here, which got a little cap on over the end, and the same again at the bottom. Can't actually see. Oh, there it is. That one there. And hopefully they are 7mm Allen key. I'm just about to find out. That's the sort of standard size for these. Yeah, 7mm. There you go, sort of pulling that out as well. The caliper slides on those. I guess it could get seized on those. I've not had one seized yet. It's more than likely going to be the piston inside. I think I'm going to need an extension bar on that bottom one. That's out as well. Also, we're going to need to remove this spring clip on the front here. They've just got two legs that hook in on this side, so you need to push it that way and out. But have your thumb on there ready to catch it, because sometimes they can ping off. That's it. Then in theory, you should be able to push the piston in by sticking a screwdriver between that pad and the disc, which I'm struggling to do at the moment. Ah, that's it there. And lever back towards yourself. The caliper should slide across and the piston will go in. But obviously that's got some kind of issue with it. So it might be a little bit of a job to get the caliper off. Especially if your brake discs have got a bit of a lip, because the pads wear into them, so you need to be able to push it in a little bit at least. This pad at the back here's got stuck. Oh, there we go. Alright, so I think we'll get these pads out and have a look at that piston next. So we're going to get these pads out next. The outer one, they usually just stick onto the caliper. Sometimes they've got a adhesive backing on the pad, so you should be able to get that off with a little tap. That's that one loose. Oh, you can actually see a crack down that one. That's quite heavily scored as well. Sometimes you find that the actual friction material is separated from the backing, the metal backing as well. So have a look around the edge, make sure there's no cracks around the edge where it's started to come away. And the inner pad has got a clip on it in the piston, which they do sometimes get a little bit mangled up. Got 3 legs in there, which don't want to come out. It should just pull out. I've got to be careful of this wear sensor as well. I don't want to really break that, although if we're replacing pads, it'll have to have a new one anyway, unfortunately. I think the leg on the pad has got wedged. Oh, that was it. That's it. Right, that pad's loose. I'll have to unplug this sensor next. Follow the wiring back. I think it's up here somewhere. Looking at the loom for the wear indicator sensor on the brake pad, it runs up along here, clips in behind the spring down here, disappears up behind this bit of felt. Now you've got a 10mm nut there. Hopefully I'll be able to pull this back and see a plastic box and get covered in mud. Oh, there it is there. So we'll figure out which one it is. brake pad loom there. These unclip. Maybe I didn't need to unclip that. Can't really see it. Oh, that's it there. It's got a separate little tag down the bottom to unclip. Right, gonna need my lights. Ah, that's got like a little barb at the top. That's it. So it looks like it's the top one. Same again there. Come on. Gotcha. Ah, there it is. So yeah, you just got a little tab to push in there. That unplugs. Get all that wiring out. Finally, remove the pad with the sensor clipped onto it. Looks like it's starting to wear on the sensor already, the brake disc. So now we've got the pads out. You can see this is the piston. When you put your foot on the brake, that pushes out and squeezes the pads together on the brake disc. I think it's this that's giving the problem. So you've got to carefully, don't go putting a hole through that rubber boot, but have a look in there and I can see already, look at all that rust in there. This sealer's probably got a hole in it somewhere and letting in rainwater and grime off the road. It's difficult to show, but that should be a highly polished surface and I can see a lot of rust in there. I'll put my grips on it and see if I can push the piston back in, but I don't think I'm going to have a lot of success. No, I can't budge it. Usually you'd be able to squeeze these together and that'll slide back in. A lot of cars have pistons on the back that look like a flat disc with two holes in, and in that case you'd need a rewind tool which you clip in and twist round, twist the piston as it pushes it back in, but this is just a standard piston which should push back in relatively easy. I mean, what I'll do next is pump the brake pedal and get the piston out a little bit further. Might be able to see a bit more of what's going on in there then. So I've pumped the brake pedal only twice and it's pushed the piston out a bit more, but you can see all that corrosion in there now. That's really had it. That should be, as I say, quite a highly polished, smooth surface. Even if you try cleaning off that rust, I mean, you might be able to free it up a bit, but it will be pitted and you'll end up with a bit of a leak. So I think that's going to need a new brake caliper on there. One other thing, well, a couple of other things to check. If you've got a back brake sticking, I've had them before where the pads themselves, they stick in these, in the caliper carrier. It should be able to slide to and fro smoothly, but they do get you know, squeezed on, wedged in place, and they can't release. And sometimes that can cause a seized brake. Also, I've had the flexible hose. They can act a bit like a one-way valve. You put your foot on the brake, the fluid goes down to the caliper, squeezes the brake on, but it won't let the fluid release. In this case, I'm pretty sure the problem lays in here. So after inspecting this, I'm going to recommend a replacement brake caliper. The discs are quite heavily worn, a bit past it, so new discs and new pads. As we saw, that one's got a bit of a crack in it, and the profile of them is all scored to match the worn discs, so good idea to replace the lot, and the wear sensor as well. So replacing discs and pads on both sides is a good idea. I think you can only buy the pads as a set of 4 anyway. You can buy discs singularly, but as you can see, they're a bit worn anyway. So we'll be doing a similar job on the other side as well. So we're going to go ahead and take this brake pipe out now on the caliper. I'm going to need to clamp off the rubber flexi hose. You can get brake pipe clamps, but I find these work really well. Just a pair of mole grips with some thick rubber sleeving on their pipe. They don't damage the brake hose and they clamp it off nicely. So I'll see if I can crack that pipe loose. I might have to bolt the caliper back on though to do that. Just grab a pry bar. Not sure this is going to work. Yeah, that's got it. Probably would have been just as well to bolt it back on loosely with the 2 7mm and then crack that loose, but that worked. That's a 14mm union there. So we're going to lose a little bit of brake fluid now, but hopefully those mole grips will stop it dripping continuously. That's it, one caliper removed. Right, so now the caliper's out of the way, we'll go ahead and take this carrier off because I am also replacing the discs. We've got the go-ahead from the customer to do discs, pads, caliper and the wear sensor indicator. So on the back here there are 2 bolts. There's one there and the other one down the bottom there, and they are 16mm. One caliper removed. While it's off, we'll put it in the vise and give these bits where the pads contact a good scrub and clean up. Then it's important that the pads can slide freely. So we'll stick that in the vise and give it a scrub up. Right, it makes it a lot easier to put it in a vise, and it's a lot easier to clean it when it's off the car as well. Can be a bit dusty though, obviously lots of brake dust, bit of rust. You might need to give it a bit of a scrape with a screwdriver if there's some stubborn bits in there that don't come off. That's it. That should do nicely. So next we're going to take the disc off, and to do that you've got a, I think that was a 6mm, let me see, yeah, 6mm Allen key grub screw in there. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of corrosion around here, so it's not just going to slide off, it's going to need a bit of assistance. A good idea to give that a whack first, just to free it off. Now this is going to take a bit of removing because there's a lot of corrosion there, as I said. Hopefully it'll come loose. You can see it's all breaking off. So this is also a drum, as I said earlier. The handbrake mechanism and shoes are in there. Oh, that's it. Quite dusty. So that's like your brake drum part of the disc, just purely for the handbrake. And there's your handbrake shoes. So I'm just going to give that a bit of a blast off with some brake cleaner. If you need to adjust the handbrake, you click it up on this wheel here, you can just turn that, and that opens up the adjuster, which pushes the brake shoes out towards the drum part of the disc. So, as you can see, just standard brake and clutch cleaner there. Gets all the muck off. It's a brilliant degreaser, and as you can see, evaporates very quickly. So I'm just going to clean off some of that corrosion that's left on this hub now. Just a bit of a wire brush off. Won't take a minute, it's well worth doing. Make it a bit easier to get the wheel on and off, that's for sure. I'll do the same with the centre of the wheel, which you can see all the white corrosion in there. It can actually get stuck so hard that you end up needing a scaffold pole to get the things off sometimes. They haven't been off for a long time. Right, so that's all cleaned and ready for refit. I'll drop that down so the dust comes out, and we'll just put a smear of grease around that when we put it back together, and hopefully that'll stop any future corrosion. So we're going to go ahead and put the new disc on now. I'm just going to put a little smear of copper grease around here, hopefully stop it seizing on again. So that's just regular copper grease. So we need to line up the grub screw hole, which is there and there. So that went on quite easily. I think I'll adjust up these shoes while it's off. I just want to go a little bit at a time. Now I need to get my torch. I've got to try and work out which way round to turn the thing, turn this wheel. I think that's de-adjusting actually, so. Yeah, a little bit more. Hopefully I'm going the right way. Oh yeah, that's definitely a snugger fit. I won't go any further than that. You can hear the shoes just rubbing. That should be fine. Well, actually, I'm going to knock it back one click. Right, so the grub screw holes lined up. Just going to nip that up. That's it. That'll hold it in place until we get the wheel back on eventually. Right, so the next step will be to refit the caliper carrier, which we've already cleaned off. So, back where it came from, and the two 16mm bolts. Right, that's on tight. Next we'll grab the caliper rather. So I've got my new caliper here, all ready to go pretty much. Put out that plug there, that's where the brake pipe goes in. Should be able to squeeze that piston back in a lot easier than the old one. Ah, it is back in, that's it. I'll try and not twist the brake pipe, flexi hose. Hopefully it'll end in a position where it's a comfortable fit and not knotted up. Yeah, so that's got a bit of a twist to it, but by the time I tighten it, that will go straight again. Right, it's just nipped. I'll double check that once it's all bolted back on the car. We'll grab the brake pads next and give them a bit of grease and refit those. So I've got a bit of copper slip. Just need to put it around the edges of the ears where it makes contact with the caliper carrier. Helps to keep them free and moving as they should do, and hopefully prevent a little bit of corrosion build-up. So the front one hasn't got the clip. They aren't directional at all, so it can go on either side, passenger side or driver side. And that is a nice loose fit in there. This side has got the clip, which you need to push into the piston. That's it. So that's ready to go. We've got the wear sensor to go on, but you can clamp that in there, clip it in there once this caliper's all fitted and bolted back up. So I've got the two sliders, the 7mm Allen keys, which I took out of the old caliper, and they just slide into these rubber grommets, rubber sleeves. And over here we've got a 7mm Allen key. So I'll go ahead and nip those up. I can actually remove that clamp now. Now the brake pipe's in. Bleed nipple's nipped up, so that shouldn't start dripping. Right, I think that one's started. Need my extension bar again. Right, they're both done up tight. I can replace those plugs that I pulled out. And then we've got the spring clip to go on, which can be a little bit fiddly sometimes. It's got to go under tension. That's it. Snapped back into place. So now that's on, I'm just going to nip up the brake pipe. Well, I nipped it up before, I just want to double check because it's going to need a bit more. That's it, that's tight enough. I think next stage would be to bleed the caliper. So before we start bleeding the brakes, I want to make sure it's got enough fluid in the reservoir. First we're going to have to locate the reservoir, which is going to be, I would imagine, under one of these covers over the top here. which seem very well stuck down. Yeah, it's underneath this one. There's a little, I'll show you once I've got it off, little clips that need releasing. That's it. Just a little leg that pushes down and clips on a little peg there, so you just have to lift this out, front and back. And there we have the brake fluid reservoir, which does look low. Yeah, that's down quite low. What I'll do is top it up to the brim, because we're going to bleed it out, so the level will fall again. And you can normally find a description on either the top or the cap stating what type of fluid you need. The majority of cars on the road use .4 fluid, but providing you give the supplier of your parts your registration number, they'll be able to recommend what you need for your car. So I've got my .4 here. I'm going to try not to spill too much of it everywhere. It's quite important that you don't use brake fluid that's been laying around in a container that's been opened. It's been sat on a shelf for years in the garage, because they do actually absorb moisture. So make sure you've got a relatively new, fresh container of brake fluid to use. Right, so now we've got the reservoir topped up. Here's the bleed nipple on the caliper. And it's actually a 9mm on this one. So I'm just going to crack that loose. It'll take a little while because there will be some air in the caliper. You can use a bottle of some description. I've got an old brake fluid bottle here and a bit of hose. You can just plug that on and catch it. Or, like I've done, I've just got a tray down here. I just prefer to keep an eye on what's coming out. You can actually see the fluid coming out, and then you might see a few bubbles come out, and just keep an eye on what's going on. Some people like to pump the brake pedal. I prefer to try it without pumping the brake pedal, because sometimes, you know, you're pushing the brake pedal to an extreme that it doesn't normally go to, and you can end up tearing the seals in the brake master cylinder. I mean, hopefully in a few moments that will start dripping, and just leave it to do its thing for a little while. So this has been dripping away steadily for a few minutes now. I've seen a few air bubbles come out. I'm fairly confident it's all out, so I'm just going to nip it up there. Don't have to go too tight because they do shear off. And I've got a dust cover to go on there. That's it. Okay, so hopefully that's it done now. I'll grab the wear indicator sensor next, and we'll get that clipped in and the wire routed through. So I've got one of the old brake pads here. So this is the new sensor, and you can see this slides down into that slot. The trouble is with the old ones, if you try and remove them, they always crack or split. The old one on this had some wear to it already anyway. So yeah, once you've pushed it in, the chance of getting it back out again in one piece are quite slim. So I'll have a fiddle around now. You might not be able to see much because I've got to get right in there, get that clipped in, and route the wire around and plug it in. That's it, that's clicked into place. Just got to try and remember which way the wire went round now. check on the other side. I'm not sure if it went over this or under it. Oh, the other side hasn't got one, has it? Of course, they only have them on one side. It seems to be okay that way round. There's the... there should be a little narrower bit that usually goes into these clips. That's probably it there. That's it. That's got it. Kind of sits comfortably there. So I've got another clip there. Which I can't really see from this angle. I'm going to have to come round, I'm afraid, and block. Oh, that's that. Back in position. That's it. Back in where it should be. I think these usually have a plastic cover on the outside, but looks like that's been gone for a while now. All securely clipped back in place anyway. Just put that nuts back on there. That 10mm plastic one. I'll just go and grab a ratchet. Doesn't need to be tight because it is just plastic, so. That's got it. Lovely, okay, so that's the disc on, the pads in, caliper on and bled, and the wear sensor in place. I think I will put a small cable tie around this just to hold it to the pipe there, although it can't really go anywhere. But yeah, that's all reassembled now. Right, so now everything's back together, back in the car. The first important thing you need to do when you've been working on the brakes, pump the brake pedal, because you will find it will go down a lot further than usual because the pistons are pushed in the calipers. So get that good pump, pedal comes up rock hard. Checking the handbrake, that feels good. 3 or 4 clicks, feels like a good handbrake. So actually I'm going to start it up as well and put some pressure on this brake pedal. And just stand on that for a little while. That will sink down, but I just want to make sure that there's no leaks on that back brake. And also that it spins freely once I take the foot off. Okay, that should do. So So we'll check that caliper and make sure there's nothing amiss. So we've stood on the pedal a few times and operated the caliper, the foot brake, and I've operated the handbrake, and it's still nice and free, so that's a good sign. I just want to make sure that there's no leaks from the pipe or the bleed nipple. Yeah, looks good. Yeah, that's dry. That's just got a bit of residue on it from where I bled it, but it's all good. All that's left to do now, put the caliper back on, the cap back on the brake fluid reservoir, refit the wheels. I've already replaced the disc and the pads on the other side, so I can get the wheels back on and give it a run. So I filled it right up near the top before we bled it, and now that it's been bled, the level is down to the maximum. So that's perfect. We'll just fit this cap back on. Make sure that's nipped up. And this, we've got a little rubber peg there that slots in that. Not that one. That one there. That doesn't want to go back on there. That's it, clips back on now. Right, let's get this wheel on. Hopefully it will go on a bit easier than it came off. Now all the hub's clean. Oh. So that one up gently. I'll get this down on the ground and double check them with a bar. So we're just going to nip up these wheel bolts on the floor, make sure everything's tight. You will, like everything on a car, you will find a tightening torque for these, and if you have got a torque wrench to hand, you can always do that. It's all well and good. They're probably going to be around about 120 Newton meters off the top of my head, but as long as you've got a bar on there, just be sensible. Make sure they're tight. So all that's left to do now is give the vehicle a run round the road, around the block. Make sure your brakes work well and you're happy with them. After a road test, I always like to double check again, make sure there's no leaks. I'll probably put a jack under here and make sure the wheel spins freely. Well, thanks for watching. Hopefully the video's been of some help for you. And if it has, please consider hitting like and subscribe. It will help our channel out no end. Cheers.